Hey guys, welcome back to the It's Really Not That Deep podcast. Imagine for a second if every single thought you had in your head were true. You would be unlovable, you would be unworthy, yet you would also be the world's top supermodel. But here's the thing, none of that is actually real. The voice in your head is not you. You are the observer of your thoughts, not your thoughts. Coming to this realization is like literally breaking out of a mental prison. I came to this realization about 8 months ago in January when I read the book, The Power of Now. And it came to the idea that, like I said, you are the observer of your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. I'll say that again. You are not your thoughts. Most of the time we go through life living like our thoughts are our identity. And considering we have so many thoughts a day, not only is this contradictory, but it is so limiting. For example, when you wake up and you think, oh, I'm so not in the mood to go through today, you might automatically associate that with, oh, I'm so lazy, and beat yourself up about it, when really it's just your brain being active. Your brain might have also thought 1 second later, oh, I'm actually really excited for this thing, but we have a negativity bias, so we're going to focus on the negativity. But if you know that you are not your thoughts, you are just the observer of your thoughts, you can choose what you pay attention to. So just a quick example of this in my life is this podcast. I have many thoughts about this podcast, more so what other people's thoughts are about this podcast. I think that people think less of me because I do this, or think I'm weird or cringe, which is probably true in some cases. But I almost didn't continue with it or even start it because of that. Now, obviously, we're here and I pushed through and I realized that that is just ridiculous to let other people's thoughts and my thoughts about other people's thoughts run the show. So I want to get you all on the same page of not all your thoughts are true, and you can actually choose which of your thoughts you want to identify with by figuring out who it is you want to be and which thoughts serve that goal. So if you don't know me, I am a master's student in psychology and I studied my undergrad in psychology. My mom's a psychologist, my sister's in her PhD in psychology. There's psychology everywhere. I study it. I love it. So I like to break down big concepts to you guys who don't study it and have it all around you, so you can understand more about yourself and your world, internal and external, because I think it's really important. So if it wasn't obvious, today's episode is about you not being your thoughts, and this is the most liberating realization you're going to have. So the first concept that we're going to talk about comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it is called cognitive defusion. And what this is essentially is creating space between you and the thought. So for example, if you're thinking to yourself, I'm a failure, I'm a loser, what I want you to try to do is reframe that thought and just realize, this is what's going through my head right now. This is what I'm thinking. But by just acknowledging that it's a thought and not an identity, you're shifting the thought from a fact to just a mental event, something that your brain is coming up with. It's not a fact. It's not real. It doesn't have to be unless I choose it to be. For example, when rehashing my breakup, I tend to think, he broke up with me, so I'm unlovable. Sorry? No. That's what my brain likes to trick me with, but I know that I am lovable. I might not have been right for that specific person, and that's okay. I might not be loved by every person, and that's okay. But I'm not unlovable. Let's not get it twisted. So again, it's about reframing those ideas. It's about letting them come in, but not letting them take over who you are or your self-esteem, letting them pass by like clouds going by. They don't define you. They don't need to stick to you. So the next concept we're going to be talking about is the default mode network. And it's the brain regions that light up when you're daydreaming, thinking about the past, or imagining the future. So your brain's inner chatter, essentially. And the brain is designed to think. You're constantly running through situations and simulations to keep you safe. So a lot of the time you're thinking about worst case scenario to think, when that happens, this is what I'll do. Thinking it's a protective mechanism, but you're actually just putting yourself through things twice. So again, just because the brain produces a thought does not mean it's true. Our brain does so much work, so much good, don't get me wrong, but a lot of nonsense. So even just recognizing that is so important, because then when you're having your thought, you can stop yourself. You can interrupt the thought and be like, okay, wait, Joelle told me this wasn't true. And even just by understanding this network and this process, you can stop yourself when you're having a thought and you can ask yourself, is this true or is this just my brain chatting away? And the best part is you get to decide what's true or not because you are you and you can change you at any point. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, like I'm not a nice person, be nicer. We're now going to talk about the thinking self versus the observing self. So the thinking self is pretty much the chatter. It's the part of your mind that goes, I shouldn't have said that. What if I mess this up? They probably think I'm weird. And although it's useful in some situations like problem solving and planning ahead, most of the time it's just noise. So that's the thinking self. The observing self is the presence behind all this noise that doesn't judge and just observes. So if I'm having all these thoughts and I'm sitting here just like kind of meditating and watching these thoughts pass me by without like grabbing them and assigning them to my identity, that's a lot more peaceful. So by realizing your thoughts are not you, you gain so much freedom. You can choose which thoughts you're going to adopt and which you're going to throw out. Also, just think about it for a second. If you're observing the thought, you can't be the thought. So the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer talks a lot about this concept. Also The Power of Now, of course. But I feel like I keep repeating myself because it's just such an important point to understand. You are not the voice in your head. You're the one noticing the voice. You're so much more than that. You have a mind, a body, and a spirit. Your mind is the one doing all the chatter, but your spirit is the one that's just observing you. Once you can acknowledge that spirit and learn to tap in and tune into that spirit, you're going to live a more peaceful, less anxious life. And I always like to say acknowledgement is the first step because acknowledging these things is the way to overcome them. And across traditions, awareness is seen as the true self. So being in a state of awareness allows you to be steady. You're not freaking out over who you are or what you're doing. It's expansive because you can learn more about yourself and understand yourself and the world on a deeper level. And it's untouched by thought. You're not bothered by thoughts because thoughts don't hold power over you anymore. So if it's not clear already, we're going to be talking about why this changes everything and how this has changed everything for me. So number one, of course, is just less suffering. When you stop believing every thought, you stop getting dragged into all of the unnecessary pains that you're imposing upon yourself. Thoughts are literally like spam emails. You can either get annoyed by them and read them and be like, oh my God, why am I getting these? Why are these coming to? Or just delete them. You also cannot forget that you have freedom of choice. You get to choose which thoughts you allow in. You get to choose which thoughts you push to the side and get rid of. And if they come back around, just keep doing it. Just keep practicing it. It's a practice. We're rewiring the neural pathways. So for example, when I'm making these podcast episodes, a thought that goes through my head every single time is that no one's going to listen. Nobody cares. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway because I have freedom to choose, and that is what I'm choosing. And in the same realm of freedom, this leads to an identity shift because you're not tied to who you thought you were. This realization can empower you to take risks and live authentically because you're not tied to this old version of you that you just keep repeating over and over again. So now that we've got all of the concepts down, let's talk about practical tools to stop the overthinking and be more in tune with our spirit. Okay, so the first thing is labeling thoughts. So when you start to have these thoughts, just again, acknowledging what's going on. I'm overthinking right now. These thoughts may not be true. Just give it the possibility that it might not be true. I always like to say to myself, Joelle, are you serious right now? Like I would say to a friend, if a friend was coming to me and saying I'm unlovable, I'd be like, what are you even talking about? I love you, so you can't be unlovable. Also, of course, I have affirmations coming in that rewire these thoughts. So everything from I'm not good enough to I'm ugly, rewire through affirmations that I practice on a daily basis. So next is a technique I've been using for the past year, and I use it while I'm meditating. I just sit there and I don't try to stop my thoughts because that's not useful. I let them come in, but I literally think of them as clouds. I think of them as like text bubbles with thoughts inside them. And I just let them pass. And then I let the next one come in and I let it pass. And sometimes I'll focus on one for a second if I need to. If I'm like, there may be a deeper meaning behind that, good or bad. I'll focus on it, I'll think about it, and then I'll choose to let it go. But I would know rationally that me thinking about it is me trying to overcome it, not me spiraling on it and catastrophizing it as much as I can. Not perfect over here. So next time you feel anxious, I want you to try to picture the cloud floating away. this thought floating above you into the universe. Let it be someone else's problem because it's not yours, not today. And the last tool or takeaway is just an anchoring practice, coming back into your body. Again, we have our Again, we have our mind, body, and spirit. So if we're in our head, we're in our mind, let's come back to our body. Let's take some deep breaths. Let's look around, look at the sun, look at the trees, look at whatever is going to ground you into the now, and take a couple deep breaths and come back here. Reclaim your power. Remember who you are. Remember that you're only on this earth for a certain amount of time and you deserve to have a good life. So, not to put all the blame on you, but your thoughts are just chatter and you're the one choosing to listen. So, again, acknowledging it is the first step. Once you can realize that this is the case, you can start to change. And it takes time and it takes practice and it takes really unwiring the pathways that you've built up for your whole life. So don't expect an overnight change, but I'm telling you, little day-to-day habits that we talk about on this podcast are going to change your life. I always talk about getting 1% better because that's all you can really do at a time. So just focus on the little changes and it has such a big impact over time, and the time passes anyway. So I just want to challenge you, next time you're having an intrusive thought, acknowledge that you're having the thought and then consciously decide if it deserves your energy. Ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? Sometimes it does. Most of the time it doesn't. So make that decision for yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you leave with a somewhat different mindset on overthinking and you being the observer of your thoughts. And I would love to hear anything you thought about this episode. Please subscribe, like, comment. Love you guys.